Stand by. Greetings. I'm Crystal Pruitt, South Atlantic Region Communications Officer and host for this special edition of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, South Atlantic Region Ivy News Network. Tonight's special segment will showcase a few authors from our online directory who will share some amazing stories about how they were inspired to publish their book and some to write another. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce a few members from the communications team, and that would be Sonia Antoine and Sharmir Gatson. Both of these young ladies are part of our dynamic team for the South Atlantic Region communications team, and they will help facilitate a lot of the questions from our live audience today. Our program tonight is being streamed across our Ivy News Network, YouTube channel, and Facebook. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments below related to our author showcase, and feel free to use the comment feature. So let's take a moment just to highlight a few of our panelists who will be representing clusters from across the region. First, if we could spotlight Stephanie Claytor. She is from Omicron Kappa Omega, Cluster 2. Next, Dr. Tracy Fisher. She is from Upsilon Alpha Omega, Cluster 5. And Dr. Pamela Leggett Robinson, Psi Alpha Omega, Cluster 5. Welcome, ladies. We're so excited to have you to be a part of our program this evening. So what we'll do initially is ask each author to give us just an overview, a 2-minute overview about yourself. Today is Women's History Month, so we are celebrating women across the globe. Some of you have been first. So we'll start with Stephanie Claytor. If you will talk about your book, and I think you may have written a second book.
Yes.
But today's a great day as we're celebrating women. Just give us a little highlight about your books and if you have been a first, so that we can celebrate and honor you this evening.
Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Stephanie Claytor, and I am the author of 2 books. The first one is Black Trekking, My Journey Living in Latin America. I published this book in 2019, and it is about my journey living in the Dominican Republic and in Colombia. I lived abroad in both of those countries, and I wanted to share with people what it was like during that experience. My second book is Kyler Treks to Ghana. I just released this February 1st. This is a children's book, and it is about my solo trip to Ghana back in 2018. And I just wanted to educate people about Ghanaian culture and also to inspire our children to want to travel the world and form opinions for themselves versus relying on stereotypes that they may see in the media. As far as myself, I am a travel blogger. I have a travel blog, blacktrekking.com. I'm also a freelance writer and a journalist, and I used to be a TV reporter. I grew up outside of Cleveland, and I currently live in Lakeland, Florida, and I'm a member of the Omicron Kappa Omega chapter.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I can't wait to hear a little bit more about your books and your travel experience. Wonderful, wonderful. Next, we have up Dr. Tracy Fisher. Dr. Tracy?
Yes,
there she
Crystal.
is.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Fisher.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority South Atlantic Regional Director Carolyn Randolph, and you, Sor Crystal Pruitt, South Atlantic Regional Communications Officer, and your team for this great invitation. Thank you. Thank you so much. My 2 books, and yes, I have 2 as well. My first book is Little Big Change, and you can see it in the background, the wallpaper, Understanding, Interrupting, and Reducing Systemic Inequity. My second book is Presence, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, yes, critical race theory, and other gifts. My PhD, earned in 2015, was all about the power of critical thinking in adulthood and the sharing of strategies among families of color that help block system barriers to achievement. So my two books are actually extensions of my doctoral research with a wide lens of focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, privilege earned and unearned, micro and macro aggressions, and yes, critical race theory and critical legal studies. The printing of my first book in 2020, Little Big Change, had to be tripled because the first printing sold out. And my second book debuted on Amazon at #1 in its category last summer, 2021. I was so thrilled. I'm going to start working on my third nonfiction book very, very soon. Yep, it will be a page turner as well. And that's kind of an achievement in the nonfiction category. Again, I'm so glad to be here with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Awesome, awesome. I am looking forward to hearing more about your critical race theory. I can't wait to hear you talk about that in a little bit more depth. So thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Pamela Leggett Robinson. Dr. Pamela, can you come on? There she is. Thank you.
No, thank you for the opportunity. I am so glad to be here. It's been a long day, but it's just great to be here to share the work. So I too have a PhD. It's in physical organic chemistry, and so my books are a little different. They're page turners to a point, but they're more research focused. So I had to go through quite a bit of hoop jumping, if you will, with the publishing companies. And so my first book was actually Overcoming Barriers for Women of Color in STEM. And the impetus for this book was actually that I had worked in higher ed for about 15 plus years as a tenured professor and an administrator, and decided to jump ship and open up my own consulting firm. And so in the process of doing it, I decided my gift to higher ed would be to talk about the woes and the ills that women of color actually face. And so that's launched the book. From there, I have a electronic newsletter that highlights overcoming barriers for women of color in STEM, but it talks about the lack of communication that we have with women not getting the information that they need to get to tenure and promotion, which brings me to the book, my last book, which was published in December. I was so happy. And it's actually an offshoot of the newsletter. And so just starting out and just doing this book, the first one has really just landed me in a place where I can actually help women overcome their barriers and also help broaden participation for women of color, especially Black women in STEM. So once again, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Amazing. And just STEM alone is such an amazing topic, not only for us as women, but for people of color as well, getting into careers and professions that are STEM related. So thank you so much. Can't wait to hear a little bit more about that. Again, if our listening audience, if you have any questions, comments, drop them in the comment section. I'm going to ask, we have Sonia who's helping me this evening. Sonia, do we have any comments or questions so far?
Sorry, Crystal, no questions just yet, but
Okay.
lots of congratulatory messages and greetings in the comments.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with Stephanie Claytor. She and I actually had a chance to chat a little bit about her book, Black Trekking and Traveling Abroad. Can we spotlight, there she is, Stephanie. Can you just give us some highlights about how you were inspired? I understand that you may have lived abroad for some time, and actually during COVID had an opportunity to write about some of those experiences and journaling. Can you talk a little bit about that? It's one of my bucket lists to do some travel abroad, hopefully when the climate is a little better, but it is on my bucket list, and I'm sure there are other women who are watching who are maybe thinking about traveling abroad, and maybe we just need a little tips and a little push to be motivated and inspired to do so. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I mean, that's the main reason I wrote my book, Black Trekking, My Journey Living in Latin America, is because I wanted to inspire young people. I wanted to inspire Black people to travel abroad and also to live abroad. The first time I went abroad, I was 19. I went to the Dominican Republic. I didn't know anyone. And I spent 4 months there. I went to college, to classes, lived with a host family. And it was just this amazing experience that taught me how to be independent, helped me become an adult. And I think that, you know, all young people should have that opportunity. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, because I wanted to provide a guide so that when people take on that adventure, they know what to expect. They know how to find different things and what to look for in a host family, what the experience will be like. So that's the reason why I wrote this book. I also got to go abroad for a second time to Colombia, and I went there on a Fulbright English teaching assistantship. And so I had the opportunity to teach English there. And it was just an amazing experience. I was there working and not as a student for that occasion. And so when I was there, I saw a lot of the different Black communities. And that I felt when I got back home, a lot of African Americans did not know about some of the Black communities in Colombia. And so that was another reason why I wrote this book, is that I wanted to talk about the different Black communities that there are in the Americas, and then also to provide a guide for people who might want to go abroad. I would say some tips if you are thinking of traveling abroad. Yes, right now is a little bit crazy because of the pandemic. I was actually looking at the travel advisories, which are on the State Department website. That's a wonderful place to look if you're trying to figure out where to go abroad. Right now, they're pretty much advising us not to go hardly anywhere. So definitely want to look at that. But you don't always have to like listen to everything they say, because they're going to be like very cautionary. But it is a good guide and
Okay, I think we may have lost her. Hopefully she's still there. Okay, we may have lost connection with Stephanie, but we'll come back. I know that she has a lot of great tips, travel tips. Certainly, if you've been thinking about travel, there's opportunities to get a passport if you haven't done so. So we'll come back to her. My next question, I want to go back to Dr. Tracy Fisher. And Dr. Fisher, if you can come on the line so we can spotlight her. Dr. Fisher.
Here. Yes, thank you.
There she is. You mentioned your book where it was part of your dissertation that may have inspired you. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that, and even how you got into writing a second book. So I'll turn the floor over to you and have you tell us more.
Stephanie is back. Would you like to continue with Stephanie before I start? Because she's back now. I can see her.
Okay.
Or would you like to jump back?
Sure, we can switch back.
Okay.
Stephanie, are you still there?
Yes.
There she is. Okay, we lost you there for a second.
I have no idea what happened there. Where did you leave off at?
It's all good. I was just sharing with our audience. You and I talked about passports.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for those who are even thinking about traveling, one of the key things before you go is to make sure you have a passport. So I wanted to see if you'd share a little bit about passports and getting a passport, even for our children, if you're looking to do some traveling as a family, the whole process, what's that like?
Yeah, definitely. I think that everyone should have a passport, especially in times like these. We don't know what's going to happen on the global scale. So I think you should be prepared, have your documents. Even if you have no plans to travel, get your passports now. Because like, what if we have to flee? You need to have a passport to leave, and your children need to have a passport. If you're thinking about this wonderful vacation abroad, well, your kids need a passport. So in our case, we just got my son a passport. And usually they have both parents sign off on it. There's a process that you can go through without the other parent, but it's a little bit more complicated. They will tell you that it takes like 4 months to get the passport back, and they'll like try to get you to buy the expedited shipping. But we found that I got our son's passport back in 3 months. My cousin got her son's baby toddler son's passport back in 3 weeks. And another friend got her kids' passports back in 3 weeks. So it seems like it's taking about like a month, maybe two. Definitely don't plan a trip right after the passport, like right after you go to get it, because you may not get it in time. But from what I'm seeing, it's taking about 3 weeks for the children's passports. Also, something to keep in mind too is a lot of countries require that you have 6 months on your passport before it expires. So if you're taking a trip and your passport is about to expire, you may have issues getting into that country. So you want to make sure that you renew your passport in a timely fashion. And some countries require you to get a visa. When I went to Ghana, they actually require you to get a visa. It wasn't a very difficult process. It didn't take a long time, but it was required. And it also wasn't that expensive. So also check those type of things. All of this can be found on the State Department website, all of this information. It's a great resource.
Okay, thank you. Wonderful information. And can you also share with our audience tonight, on your trip to Ghana, I think you did a lot of journaling. What was that like?
Yeah, so when I went to Ghana, I took a lot of notes because I was writing for my travel blog. And so I have tons of posts on there and videos, interviews, all of those things. And so I went for 9 days. I was in Accra. I went to Kumasi, where the Ashanti Kingdom is located. I got to see how kente cloth is made. The Adinkra symbols, which Sankofa is one of the Adinkra symbols. I got to make that. I also went down to the Cape Coast Castle and got to see, you know, where my ancestors as an African American, where they were captured and enslaved and put on slave boats. So I got to like walk in the dungeons and go through that experience. And so it was just like a very life-changing experience for me. And after having my son, I realized that it was a story that needed to be put into a children's book so that our children could also learn this story, because it's not getting taught in our schools. Like we talk about Black history and it kind of just stops at slavery. But no, like our people came from Africa, many of them from West Africa. They left behind beautiful traditions and a beautiful culture. And so I wanted our children to learn about that. And so that's why I wrote my second book, Kyler Treks to Ghana.
Amazing. Thank you so much. A lot of good information tonight. And again, for those who might be listening, if you have questions for our panelists, feel free to drop comments and we'll answer them live. Hopefully we have any questions tonight. I am going to now, thank you, Stephanie, segue back to Dr. Fisher. We could spotlight her again. And I think, Dr. Fisher, did you have a slide? I think you're actually going to share some information with us.
I may not. I mean, it just depends. I don't want to use too much time. So if there's time for Dr. Leggett Robinson. So I am going to answer your first question about the inspiration for writing. So I have to give a shameless plug first to my undergraduate university, which is the Mecca, Howard University, Washington, D.C. And I earned my master's in educational administration and policy from the University of Georgia. Another shout out. I earned my specialist degree in adult education from the University of Georgia and a PhD in adult education also from, guess where? The University of Georgia. I live in Georgia. I'm right here. So I will tell you that the people who inspired me to write Little Big Change are friends that cross the political divide, cross demographics, cross gender. They are friends of mine who said, you're on the lecture circuit, you lecture, you give a lot of information that is useful about diversity, equity, inclusion. Why don't you consider writing a book? And I said, that might be a good idea to do that, because then I can give them out, use them as kind of a primer and give them out so that I don't have to talk as much, I can show more. So my books are designed to be very, very short, very, very active. Both books are under 100 pages long. And there's a checklist on Little Big Change. I don't know if you can see that. I'm kind of virtually showing you. But it's a personal checkbook to write inside of the book those things that you can do as a change agent. So those three people specifically who inspired me to write Little Big Change are my brothers, Stephen and Scott, also Howard University grads. undergrad, a very good friend in undergrad. Her first name starts with a P. I'm not going to say who she is. She knows who she is. And a former colleague, first initial E. They all encouraged me at about the same time. It seemed like kismet to write about the topics that I had been invited to speak about to different organizations. I've spoken to the DC Bar Association. I've spoken to the Social Security Administration. I've spoken to lots of different types of organizations with a variety of a variety of audiences. And I did that because I thought that they would be able to utilize the textbooks, the books, to augment what I was saying. So as I said before, the printing of the first book had to be tripled because it sold out. So with that said, I will tell you that I think that diversity, equity, inclusion was embedded in my soul well before all of the shenanigans in 2020 and well before, in all seriousness, the pandemic. Hence my deep dive in 2015 to explore that from a research perspective. And that was what really was the impetus initially for the 6 years of deep research on diversity, equity, inclusion, critical race theory, critical legal studies, etc., and transformative adult behavior. So to answer your question, that's where this came from.
Awesome. And it's a relevant and timely topic. I know that many of us in our professional worlds are talking about diversity and inclusion. I think it's a global conversation that needs to be had. And I love the idea of a checklist. If we're going to be that quote change agent, I love that. So hopefully we can all make a pledge to be about change, and hopefully you can share that. If it's in the book, again, a lot of the books that are presented tonight are on Amazon. They're listed in our online directory. And I know that we'll be dropping comments in our YouTube comment section so that you'll be able to find their books and learn a little bit more. So I'm going to move along to our,
one extra,
yes.
well, I was going to say one extra thing, just to make sure I squeeze this in. The rationale for critical theory has been batted around in social media and through voices who really know zero about it. Mm-hmm. And it was my mission with the second book to make sure the person, Dr. Derek Bell, the person who coined this phrase and did the research, the first Black tenured Harvard law professor, Dr. Derek Bell. So for those who are interested in finding out about critical race theory in particular, in my second book, that's where you can find that. You can shorthand in terms of understanding where it came from, who's responsible for it, why it was used and is used still, and those areas in education across the educational array of coursework and degrees that one can obtain. So please make sure that if you want a text that can give you a whole lot of information in a very small package, those two books will do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One of the things I love about having this online directory of authors for the South Atlantic region is the fact that any topic that you can think of, let me tell you, our members of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority have written about it or probably writing about it already. And so I know the directory has a plethora of authors to choose and to purchase books and to read and learn so much more. So with that being said, I'd like to now turn our attention to Dr. Pamela Leggett Robinson. And I know that we were talking a lot about STEM and really pushing women, particularly into looking at some careers and focus in the STEM world. So can you give us a little bit of overview and what inspired you? I know you did a lot of research as well.
Yeah, so, as I mentioned in the introduction, I was in higher ed for about 15 plus years, moved up the ranks, got tenure and promotion, and moved from Tuskegee. I taught there and then went to Georgia Perimeter. And so during this time, I had lots of grants, and all my grant programs were to really broaden the participation of African Americans in STEM. So let me be really clear. It says women of color, but I look the way I look, and that's my positionality. So I also believe that when we serve the least of them, the greater good is served, right? So I look at everything from the lens of a Black woman. And so in going through the process of obtaining an undergraduate degree, obtaining a master's, obtaining a PhD, I started to take note of all the ills within the academy. Um, and so there's some at the undergraduate level, they're there. The graduate level, masters are there, PhD level, but the faculty level was really, really disheartening. And I began to think about all the ways in which we are oppressed, all the things that happen to us. I think about intersectionality, gender bias, prove it again, some things we do to ourselves. Let's be transparent, but by and large, there are things that the system puts on us. And so that was really the reason I decided to write. In leaving the academy, I said, let me give a gift to the academy and let me help people that look like me traverse and navigate that professoriate or just not even the professoriate, but navigate that STEM culture, because it can be very, very difficult. As a chemist, it's still pretty much, when I go to the professional meetings, people don't look like me, they're white males. And so breaking into that space and having a support system, having mentors, having role models is vitally important. And all those things are mentioned in the text.
Awesome. So now we're going to just ask a few questions, and any one of our panelists feel free to respond. But one of the questions I have is, what do you hope readers will take away from your book? You know, as we're encouraging those members of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority and others. I know some of our chapters are starting or hosting book clubs. But as women, as we purchase your book, what do you hope we walk away with? And anyone can respond to that.
I'll take it first. I'll take it first. If
Okay.
Pamela, are you okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I hope that the takeaway is that change happens inside of us, and it happens with us doing things. It's action oriented. It comes from a place of knowledge as well. When you know what you need to do, and you know the tools that you have personally to facilitate change, a lot of things can happen. And those small changes will and can and have led to immense change. We can't have change. Change doesn't happen that's deep without positive behavior. And my books are extremely positive. They speak to, again, a wide range of audiences to get people to think. Think about what you want for yourself in terms of how you interact with people. Think about what you want your children, how your children will interact as they grow up. And think about how you want this country and this world to behave toward each other, regardless of whether or not we have disagreements. We can agree to disagree, but it's how you do that that makes change happen.
Absolutely. Do we have any other panelists that would like to respond?
Sure, I'd like to say something. My goal is to encourage more Black people to travel. So that's number one. I want to encourage our young people to study abroad, because I really think that it helps them become independent and be able to take care of themselves. I think it's an experience that all young people should undertake. And also, for my second book, Kyler Treks to Ghana, I really want to encourage people, Black people, to go back to the motherland, to learn about our ancestors, to learn about our culture that we left behind. I mean, when you walk in that dungeon in the Cape Coast Castle and you see the conditions that our ancestors were living in, you walk away so strong, because you're like, you know what? If they could get through this and survive, and for my family, we have been in the United States, the Claytors, since like the early 1700s. So if we could survive this long from all of that, like, I can do anything. And so I really want all Black people to experience that. So that's my main goals.
Awesome. And I think Dr. Leggett Robinson, did you have a comment as well?
I did. So, although it's about STEM, it's one of those secrets that nobody really wants to talk about, or those things, right? We don't have a lot of Black women going into STEM. For whatever reason, we get pushed to the side in math. We get pushed to the side in chemistry. And the only places that we really flourish when we're talking about STEM is biology. And that is actually because there's little or no math there. And so as people are reading this book, I want them to understand that there's various ways that you can break into STEM and stay there. And the beauty of the book is that although I'm an editor and I'm an author in 2 of the chapters, every chapter is written by a Black woman in STEM. There's a biologist, there's a provost, there's a nanoscientist, there's another chemist, there's a neuroscientist. And so when people read the book, I want them to see the ways in which these women have navigated these spaces and have told their stories and have left the legacy for the young women coming behind them. And then when we talk about the second book, once again, it's the same premise. Like, I want women to understand that tenure and promotion is something that they can do. A lot of us are in higher ed in the sorority, and we don't talk about the process of tenure and promotion. It is a very violent process. And until we start speaking about it from an authentic voice and helping our sisters navigate that space so that they can become whole, regardless of what the outcome is, we can't move to the other side. And so those are the takeaways that I want people to get. 1, that they can overcome any barrier in STEM, and 2, that they can get to the other side of tenure and promotion and stay whole.
All right. Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Ladies, I do want to just pause just for a second, because Madam Regional Director Carolyn G. Randolph is actually on the line with us, and I want to give her an opportunity to greet you and to welcome our authors, especially on this first day that we honor women, Women's History Month. Madam Regional Director, hello.
Hello, how are you? It is so great to see faces, and I am so excited and thankful to SAR Crystal for, continuing to plan such a live show so that the sorority, especially the South Atlantic region, is aware of what kind of talent. And I just love the variety of writing. And so, I have the list. And when I come out of this office and take a little vacation, wherever it is, I am certainly going to have some of these with me. But I want to thank you, first of all, for sending in your information, because this inaugural showcase of authors is something that I hope will continue on, because there are even so many more that we would like to hear from on all levels. So I want to say to Dr. Robinson and Ms. Fisher and Ms. Clayton that, Congresswoman Frederica Wilson say, my pride is showing every time. My pride is showing when we have an opportunity to showcase you, and not just showcase you because you've written something, but we never know the thoughts that go into writing just by reading the book. And so that is very, very dear to me, and I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Madam Regional Director, and we're so excited that you had an opportunity to stop by and meet and greet our authors. Again, for our listening audience, if you have any questions, feel free to drop comments below, and we will continue along as we continue to talk with our panelists. Let me just check in. Sonia, do we have any comments or questions?
Lots and lots of comments. Great information. SOARs are quite appreciative of all that you all are sharing. So thank you on behalf of everybody watching. No questions just yet, SOAR Crystal.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to get into a little bit of, we get a lot of questions from aspiring writers. So we have 3 dynamic authors with us today. So on each of your books, you have some beautiful covers. And I know a lot of work goes into illustrating. So I'm going to start with Stephanie Claytor, can you, especially because I know you've done 2 books and one of your books, specifically a children's book, can you talk about the process for designing that beautiful cover? Like what goes into selecting a cover and the images that you came up with?
Thank you. That's actually a great question. So, well, first off, my first book, it has pictures, and these are actual pictures of me in different places in Colombia. And I have to thank my sister for making this cover for me. And the second book, Kyler Treks to Ghana. So there was a lot of thought that went into the illustrations in this book. And a lot of people tell me that they really love the illustrations. So for the cover, this is actually it's called a Black Square. It's well-known monument in Ghana, in Accra. And so I was very meticulous with this cover, working with my illustrator, making sure that all the details were correct. Because initially the illustrator had the star blue. Well, it's called Black Star Square. So I was really paying attention to make sure that everything was right because I wanted to give Ghana the justice that it deserves. So this is a very famous Independence Square where a lot of the Ghanaians meet for different national rallies and that type of thing. And then this is our family. This is my son, Kyler, who it's named after. He will be 21 months this week, and my husband and myself. Also, I kind of struggled with how we want it to be portrayed because we're talking about an African-American family. And my son is very fair skinned and he has light eyes because his grandmother has light eyes, but he's still African American. And so I kind of struggled like, should I, what skin tone should I make him? Should I make him different or should I make him look at how he looks? And so I decided that I'm going to make him be authentic and show the variety of shades that we have in our culture. So I kept that way. And what's special about these pictures are many of them are actual pictures that I took while I was in Ghana. So like this picture is taken from actual pictures that I took, this illustration. So this is a really good replica of what it looks like. I was just amazed at how the illustrator was able to capture what I told her. Also, there's one more picture I wanted to show you. This one, I sent her a video of them making kente cloth and pictures, and she captured this exactly. Like my tour guide, he looks exactly like this. This is the actual like pattern the guy was making in the video. And so what I'm really proud of is that in this book, the illustrations are very accurate. They're very authentic. They're very up to date with what you would see if you were to go to Ghana tomorrow.
I love it. I love it. How beautiful. And I love the varying shades of color because it's authentic. It's who we are.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. When you're selecting an illustrator, did you have to seek out like a call out for resumes? How did you pick the person?
See, that was one of the things where I almost quit when I was working on this book because you know, you cross so many hurdles when you write a book. First, I wanted to get it published by a main publisher. I sent it out to literary agents and I had to wait like a couple months and I got, you know, letters saying, no, we're not interested, change this or that. But instead of being discouraged, I listened and changed my storyline. So then I felt good about my story, what I had. I knew I had good content. And so I was trying to find an illustrator. And when you're writing a children's book, you need to have money to pay for these illustrations. That's like the biggest upfront cost. And, you know, some of these illustrators were charging like $7,000 for 20 pictures. And I mean, you're not making a ton of money per book, especially as a self-publishing. You have to hustle to sell all these books. You don't have a publisher out here selling them for you. So I knew because of my first book that was going to be a lot of money I'd have to recoup. So I had to decline that. Also, I found that a lot of the illustrators, they are backed up for like 6 months, 8 months. They wanted me to wait to get my illustrations. And my goal was to get the book done before the end of 2021. So that just wasn't going to work for me. So also I would say definitely plan in advance. And so what I did was I'm in some of the Black author groups on Facebook. And so I scoured those, I searched for illustrators and I read through all the comments. And my illustrator was actually mentioned in one of those comments. I would have never found her on my own, but someone had suggested that she did good work and she was great. And so I just emailed her, and she was just wonderful to work with, reasonably priced. And I mean, I had so many revisions because I told you I was very meticulous about this. The colors, everything had to be right. And she was just so easy to work with, and it was a wonderful relationship. So that would be my advice, is to go in the Facebook groups, join these author groups, ask the other authors, look at books that you like on Instagram, see who their illustrator is, and send them an email and see what they quote you.
Excellent tips. Thank you. And I didn't realize that there's an author group on Facebook. So I guess you have a following. So again, for some of our listening audience, if you're interested, drop a comment so that we can respond to it, but wealth of information. And now I'm going to ask Dr. Pamela if she would share some feedback on her book and the illustration and the process you went through.
Yeah, so the first book, The Overcoming Barriers, because it's a research text and it's with an academic publishing company, there's only so much flexibility that you can have. So they invite you, so you have to be invited. So they invite you to publish a book, and then you seek out proposals, and then you review the proposals, and then you have a series of reviewers. So you don't have to pay for any editing, because once you go through the publishing company, they do all that. And you do get some nice royalties depending on, where people are buying from. Usually they're libraries and institutions, but they're very careful about what goes into the book, and they're very careful about what goes on the front cover. But you do have, flexibility in the colors, and you have flexibility in the pictures, but the layout itself, you don't really have a whole lot of flexibility. So the only thing I ask for, it has to be a Black woman, and she's got to be doing something in science. What you're not going to do is put somebody that's not Black on here. Like, we can't tell if she's Black or white. I need her to be a sister. But so one of the things that we did, the color scheme, and I love pink and green, but the color scheme that they gave me was not that. And so they gave me the color scheme of purple and light blue, and I balked at it. But it was very palatable for the reader, and I began to understand that. One of the things in the book was about the butterfly effect, and how when we're going through this process of becoming really entrenched in navigating the landscape of STEM, it's almost like a butterfly, and we go through this process, but we come out on the other side so much more beautiful than when we went in. So that being said, when I went to do the second book, my son and I really talked about this, because to be honest with you, the second book was his idea. So he was like, Mom, you can take these P&T tips that everybody loves, and you can put this in a book that people will read. It doesn't have to be an academic book. It's a good read, a fun read, a metacognitive, kind of book for you. But he said, let me put the butterfly on the front of the book. And that's exactly what he did. And so what you see is the butterfly in the cocoon. And so it constantly reminds you of the process. And he did this on his own. And so I try to keep it as close to the family as humanly possible. I did have to pay an editor. And we mentioned that the other night when we were speaking. But once again, I really make sure that I am broadening participation in STEM any way I can. So although he's a journalism major, he knows more about STEM than some regular folks. My editor, journalism major, and now she knows about STEM, and she also knows about the tenure and promotion process. So it's costly. Like, I didn't have to pay him a whole lot. I did have to pay him. And the editor was a bit pricey, but it was well worth it. Well worth it.
Wow. Excellent. Excellent. So that leads me to our next panelist, Dr. Tracy Fisher, who actually said, I don't need an editor. So can you tell us about how you got the cover and how you took on editing your own book? Because I understand that you're an English major. Is that correct?
Yes, my degree from Howard University is in comparative English literature. I also taught for 15 years AP Lang and gifted education in language arts. And I was a reporter for a commercial radio station and also for national public radio stations. So writing for me is my wheelhouse. Any of my chapter sorors and Upsilon Alpha Omega will tell you that for sure. So I didn't need the editor. I didn't need that. What I needed was somebody to set the book up for me. And in addition to that, with the technology piece, that was the piece I needed. And I have sorors in the chapter, sisters in the chapter, who range from Gen Z to the greatest generation, who are tech wizards and friends as well. So I enlisted some help in that regard. And then I had someone help me actually do the layout. For the covers are inspired to me. This book was in my head probably, and the cover as well, probably since high school. And I hadn't formulated the book, but as I grew and learned and experienced the kinds of change agent actions that I thought were really integral to having change happen incrementally in ways that women could manage. So there's a woman on my cover. I don't know, I'm having a hard time showing mine because you can see it right here. She is a silhouette. That was purposeful. So she represents every woman, regardless of background. And her hair is an unbun for the same reason. This used to be a guy. The first artist made it a man. I'm like, nope, 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 nope. Fix it. Take him off, put her on. So that chasm that she's leaping over does not look impossible. I made him narrow it just a bit so it looks like she can make it over that chasm. And that chasm is the, oh gosh, surmountable difference and differences in how people get along, how they interact, how change can be made systemically. And that visual just spoke to me. On the second book, play on words, presence. Diversity, equity, inclusion, in my mind, is a gift. All of this information is worthy of sharing. And so I had the idea in my head of a package, and my art person said to me, why don't we put the gift tag? Why don't we put diversity, equity, inclusion on the gift tag? So if you look at it closely, if you decide to get the book, you'll see that that is the tag. But play on words for the title, presence, gift, but also presence, PRESENCE, as in be there.
Love it. Love it. Dr. Tracy, we also have a question, I understand. Sonia, is that right? We have a question
Yes.
for you.
Yes,
okay,
or
before
Crystal.
we wrap up.
Yes,
Okay.
Dr. Tracy, how do both of your books tie in? That's one of the questions we received.
Oh, that's such a great question. And I'm not going to eat up a whole lot of time about that, but I would suggest that if you go on Amazon and look at the summary that is given and also the excerpt from the book, you can kind of see that. How they tie in I'm trying to limit it to a sentence. You know, teachers try to make things short and tight. Is that diversity, equity, inclusion hits us all. It's all a part of our lives in whatever capacity we do anything. We should be having jobs in STEM, as Dr. Leggett Robinson said. We should be traveling, like Stephanie Claytor said. We should be making sure that we put ourselves in places where we are not necessarily the most familiar, but where we should be more familiar. And that's everywhere. So that's the tie.
Well said. Well said. Well, we are almost out of time this evening. This has been an excellent conversation, very diverse group of authors. I do want to thank everyone for tuning in to our special INN segment, showcasing some of our published authors. And again, happy Women's History Month. Hopefully you all continue to uplift one another, support our authors. Do go and review our online directory. But before we actually close out, we will highlight and spotlight our three authors showcased this evening. But I do want to go back, and if Madam Regional Director is still on the line, I'd like to give her an opportunity to give some final thoughts and closing remarks.
Is that now?
Yes.
Well, my closing remarks again is to say thank you. Thank you to the authors. Thank you to the audience. And when we look at this tonight and we think about this tonight, please share that this is part of our YouTube channel. So SORA's members of families can go back and look at this. And it is certainly worth that. I'm going to go back so I can get the first half that I missed. So thank you again with all my heart. Thank you, Ms. Pruitt. And so until the next time.
Thank you, Madam Regional Director. And again, I want to thank our authors. Again, you all are amazing. You have some amazing stories. Hopefully our members will continue to support you. Again, there is an online directory. It is the first for South Atlantic region. So do support our authors who are showcased here in the region. Stay tuned. We may have some special treats during the regional conference. So stay tuned and more information to come. Again, we want to thank everyone for watching and supporting all of our authors that have been showcased today. And again, we'll see you at the 69th Regional Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, this coming April. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Night, everyone.
That was so good.
I like my eyes.